Hello. I don't know if you can hear us, but we're just starting this webinar. I think we're waiting for some people to be joining us. So we'll get started in a minute or so. Try and start sort of bang on 1 o'clock because we have 25 minutes to cover quite a lot of ground with our three speakers here. So I can see a few people popping up in the chat. So that's good to see. And just have a quick look down here of our attendance list. Yeah, looking good. Yeah, excellent. So if you are just joining us, we're just waiting to get started. We'll start in just a few moments. There is a chat function, which you've probably seen already if you've been in sessions earlier. Feel free to add questions at any time to that. In fact, I can see a question or comment has already been added. So very good. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome back from your lunch break, and hopefully you've been enjoying this morning's sessions and also had a chance to take part in the networking session over lunch. I've been asked to thank Cisco for sponsoring that event. So in this session, well, we've had some excellent sessions this morning, but in this session, we're turning our attention to business lessons from 2021 and top priorities for 2022 and beyond. And we're very fortunate to be joined by three excellent speakers who each bring a different perspective to this. So we've got we've got a lot to get through and only 25 minutes to do it. So I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves briefly so we know where they're coming from, and then just dive straight into the discussion. So can I turn to Natalia first? Natalia Cerga from Digital Shadows. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Natalia Cerga. I'm a Regional Intelligence Collections Manager at Digital Shadows. Digital Shadows has a software that is used for digital risk protection.
Excellent. Thank you. And Serdar?
Good afternoon, all. Serdar Cabuk here. Recently, I was a managing partner for Deloitte and IBM for the European businesses. Nowadays, transitioning into a new role in the UK as a partner in security, 20 years in the industry.
Excellent. Thanks, Serdar. And we have Roshni Thuama from Sift.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Roshni Thuama. I am head of cyber governance with Sift. We're an award-winning, fast-growing top 100 cybersecurity firm to watch. We address the most significant cyber threats, and I'm delighted to be here, Tom. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, terrific. Well, thank you all for joining us. I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you in this discussion. What I wanted to start, given the title of our talk, is what I want to start by asking you is, what would you say were the top 3 cyber threats from 2021, and how much is that changed from previous years? How is the threat landscape sort of evolving as we go along? And I suppose maybe just turn to well, I'll start with Natalia again, given your role in what you do. Go ahead.
Yeah, certainly. For us, top 2021 threats were impersonating domains, data leakage, as well as sale of unauthorized goods on criminal forums. The phishing trend started in 2020 with the pandemics, and it still continued in 2021. And it affected multiple companies within different sectors. And the most affected sectors remain financial institutions, retail, delivery and food chain companies. Also, we've noticed items such as discount codes, gift cards being on trend on deep and dark web, and also it includes refund methods as another example.
Right. And how much of that do you think is changing, sort of, from what you've seen in previous years?
It changed quite a lot with the beginning of pandemics, and it kind of continued in 2021, I would say, because people shifted to buying things online, and obviously things like gift cards, they wouldn't be popular before 2020, but as pandemic started, people started buying online. They became more popular, like discount codes and first things that would help them save money as well.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Okay, and yeah, Serdar.
Same question, I suppose, right?
Yeah, same question.
You know, going back to your second question, which is what's changed. So I think, you know, we called the last year maybe more of a consolidation year, because obviously a lot has gone on to digital. So whilst we haven't seen a completely new attack vector like and ransomware the year before, it's at least in the volume that we've seen. The last year was more opportunistic. I think it was mostly some of the criminals taking stock of, as Natalia mentioned, people spending more time online and obviously getting bored of working from home and clicking on those nice online coupons. I think there's nice business in there for an organized criminal, and also attacking or at least probing the new digital infrastructure that was put into place very recently. So I suppose this is going back to, as the criminals have these low-hanging fruits, they don't need anything fancy to go after, and they're going to look into exploit these things in the coming months. So it's more of a consolidation and taking, you know, taking charge, taking the stock of what's changed over the last 18 months.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Serdar. And Rois.
This is really interesting. I'm not going to repeat what Natalia and Serdar have said, but to Serdar's point, you know, this is what we know. The fundamental principle of criminology is that crime follows opportunity, and there's been plenty of opportunity. If you look to the European Union Agency on cybersecurity, they have 9 prime threats, and pole position, they put ransomware, and then there's a couple of others. They put email related threats. Interestingly enough, and I've not seen this before, we have cryptojacking. So for the small businesses that are like watching today, small and medium-sized businesses, let's leave cryptojacking aside, because I'm assuming that they're not mining crypto. But the things that could really impact them going forward are, of course, ransomware and email related threats. And that remains unchanged. And I think that the panel will agree with me, over the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen this time and time again, email related threats and ransomware being in either first, second, or third position. So it's both a surprise that there's no change, and it's also not surprising that we're seeing the same stuff consolidated, like Serdar says, again and again.
Right, indeed. So I mean, we see a lot of the same threats, happening again and again. And I guess one of the questions that pops up for me, looking at that, is why do we continue to fall for the same threats again and again? Why is it that this happens? And maybe Rois, I mean, can I turn to you?
Yeah, so there's a really interesting actually Natalia mentioned that COVID has become a dominant lure in email. So we're seeing the same threats, we're seeing the same vulnerability, but they just have a different facade on it. So it's different window dressing, but it's the same vulnerability. So there's a really interesting tool called BIMI Radar, and you can go to bimiradar.com. And what that does is it will show you what this survey have done. They've collated 50 million domains related to businesses worldwide, and then they crunch all of the data belonging to them. And there is a protocol that is a global standard that ought to be implemented by businesses. The government in the UK and in the United States have mandated it for their suppliers. And what BIMI Radar does is it surfaces that of the 50 million, only 2% of businesses globally have implemented this important protocol. Now, that important protocol would be able to shut down quite a significant amount of this opportunity really for the cyber criminals. It's recommended as layer 1 by the National Cybersecurity Centre. The Australian Signals Directorate recommends it. In the United States, the Department of Defense is requiring it of their suppliers in their cybersecurity maturity model certification process. So we're seeing more and more that there is more stick than carrot to drive the adoption of DMARC, which is a fundamental protocol to protect email. So the reason that we're seeing it is because people, I mean, look, there's a lot to do, and I think that the cybersecurity sector could be accused of being overly complicated.
Okay.
And what we need to do is we need to have a single trusted voice. And I would say to any business that's listening today, do you know, go to the National Cybersecurity Centre UK. They give really, really good advice. And this is a lawyer talking, right? So if you know that something is a problem, then fix it. If it's reasonably foreseeable and it's avoidable, sort that out. Don't worry about 0 day just yet. Let's get the basics.
Right.
Yeah, settled.
Yeah. I see Natalia nodding along to that. Get the basics right. Is that one of the is that a message from Digital Shadows?
Yeah, I cannot agree more to that. I think companies can stop falling within the same attacks by simply doing more training their employees, because employees can empower and stop lots of those threats. But just bringing an example, 50% of your employees wouldn't fall victims to the phishing emails, because this is the trend that we see now. This would mean that they would click on less malicious attachments like hyperlinks, and it could reduce your data leakage as well as your ransomware attacks, because lots of ransomware attacks are based on those phishing emails too. So there's lots of linkage to that, and obviously.
But isn't that, I mean, yeah, sorry to jump in. I'm just training, I think is very important. I think a lot of our audience are the sort of, small to medium sized companies. Isn't that kind of training, isn't it, take a lot of time and investment to, train your staff? I think that might be one of their concern for businesses.
I think it is, but in long term, it plays quite well, because just seeing the example of Digital Shadows, and work for multiple companies until Digital Shadows, and probably it's because we are a cybersecurity company and everyone is cautious before clicking on any email. We wouldn't really open external emails. Well, in other companies, you wouldn't really know how to follow things and what to look for. So just those basic skills and how to detect those are really important. And it really helps employees learn, and just to avoid clicking on things that they're not sure of, or cross-check things as well. We are a bit on the cautious side of things, and that really helps the company in general.
Right. Okay. So some basic training in phishing awareness help companies out a lot. And Serdar, I mean, what did you want to come in on this one?
Yeah, I do. Obviously, I will, like any other security professional, I will agree with the baselines not being there. Also, training point. I suppose for me, it also goes about improving your resiliency, and that's a very heavy word, and we need to basically describe what it really means. And what it really comes down to is two things. One of them is the security hygiene. So if you're an SMB, right? So if you're looking where to start, I mean, you don't want to start with a vulnerable set of vulnerabilities in your infrastructure or in the good old. It's not the sexiest part of security. It's not the ADRs or MDRs of this world, but it is necessary. So if something goes through your stuff, at least you're able to contain it. The second part is being resilient, is having a good recovery plan, and not even a response plan, but a recovery plan for the eventual day. And I see more and more security scenarios going into BCPs and business continuity plans. So if I were in your shoes, I would look at that rainy day that you might get hit, that actually, if you can respond and recover quickly, sometimes it's as good as, maybe sometimes better than having a good protection. The final point is going to your original question, which is, why do we see the same behavior? So if you have this lack of security baseline and a rapidly building digital infrastructure on top of it, so you can imagine we're kind of building something on top of a not very good foundation, that means that will only get worse. Obviously, you are building something very new, your citrus farms or your work from home environments onto maybe a not very good, great foundation. So unfortunately, that will only add to your problems going forward. So that's why I think we're seeing more of this. We put more stuff on not good foundation that gets exploited, something goes through and that becomes an issue, data leakage, business disruption, whatnot.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think there was, during the pandemic, there was a real rush, wasn't there, amongst businesses to, who may have been looking at a sort of a 3-year time horizon for developing work from home strategies, and suddenly having to implement that in 3 days, or, or literally overnight. Do we have sort of the feeling that that's that kind of throwing open the networks has caused a lot of problems for organizations?
Let me maybe finish that point. You're spot on. So it's accelerated digital, right? And the digital is here to stay. Nobody is going to go back to the previous status quo. One of my clients claimed that they will all go back to the office, and it's not going to happen. So the point is, with this acceleration, security often obviously gets left behind. And I think for me, one of the directions that we are taking is to change a bit of the language of security, make it a bit more maybe inclusive. And what I mean by that is, it's not about saying no to your CIO every time they ask whether we can go to cloud or we can go, working remotely, but helping them how to do that securely and maybe even faster by doing it securely. So then changing it a bit of a more positive language to say, it's not a no, but we can actually get you there safely and more securely. If you do it this way, you can put more workflows in the cloud. If you did this, etc. So it's a bit more the mentality that needs to change as well.
Yeah, indeed. So I mean, we've got sort of 2 tracks, going on. We have the sort of the technical infrastructure, and then we have, for organizations, some of which aren't very big and don't have the resources. And then we also have the sort of the training side of that. I wanted to come back to Rois, because I know she has a lot of expertise in the training area. I just wanted to pick up on that.
Actually, Serdar, in a way, and this is to Natalia's point on the training, but Serdar has actually kind of neatly come full circle, because what he said was we need to change the language. He also introduced the word resilience, and we're going to talk about training. So there's a Digital Operational Resilience Act, which is coming out of Europe. It will apply to financial entities, and that is written so wide that it's like, everything: banks, cryptocurrency, insurance, reinsurance, brokers, investment funds, the whole shebang. Okay, great. So now it applies to them, and what must they do? Well, you must do what it says on the tin. You must become more operationally resilient. And maybe cybersecurity was biting off too much, but to become operationally resilient, how do you do that? Well, you have to address reasonably identifiable circumstances. From a legal point of view, this is fantastic, but I would submit that anything that is in the European Union's Cyber Threat Landscape Report is not reasonably identifiable, it is easily identifiable. If the National Cybersecurity Centre is warning you, guys, the #1 problem is business email compromise or phishing, whatever name they decide to give it, and then the solution is this global standard, you know what? Just put your seatbelt on, don't drive drunk. This is, we're not going to drink the sea here.
Yeah.
As to training, so training, it's interesting because on the digital operational resilience, the board must now be trained. Serdar made the point, they shouldn't always say no. And what we're going to do is we're going to have more educated boards. And so businesses will be able to make better decisions faster. This is really, really great news, because I think all of us can agree that there's often times where businesses are inefficient, where you'll have a person who understands the problem and the solution will take it to a budget committee, and then the budget committee vetoes it. Now, having 4 eyes looking at spending in a business is a good idea, and it's a governance like 101, okay?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But what often happens is that the experts get overridden by people who don't understand it. And then that's driving inefficiencies in the business. And then you're not able to materially defend yourself. I have one more point to make on training, and then I promise I'll stop talking.
Okay, right.
So I'll be super quick. So there are these two magnificent professors out of Germany, Professors Angela Sass and Melanie Volkamer, and they have reviewed phishing training, and they've made the determination as trusted independent experts that phishing training has limited efficacy, that it is expensive, that it drives down productivity, and it damages trust. So any small or medium-sized business that's watching today, wishing they had the resources to implement phishing training, my point to you is don't worry, there are other things that you can do which will have a greater impact.
I think this is, I mean, and this really underscores the problem for, you know, the small to medium-sized businesses out there, doesn't it? That where do they get the trusted advice? And I mean, you mentioned the NCSC, and you know, that's a really excellent place for people to start. Start with cyber hygiene. That's been mentioned a few times. So that's really important for people to get the baselines, as I think you've all underscored that point, to get the baselines correct. I just wanted to say to the audience that we are going to be taking questions. So do put those questions into the chat, and I'll pick those up in shortly. We've only, as I said at the beginning, we don't have much time, and we're nearly we're coming to the end of our time, actually. So what I wanted to ask, each of you really is, just how would you sum up, what are what are the key takeaways for the small to medium-sized businesses? If you had to say, key takeaway, one or two key takeaways from this, what would it be? And maybe we'll just start with start with Serdar.
Yeah, I have three, not one or two, so if that's okay with you. So one is for me, for you, all of you, to understand what this new working environment means to you, the hybrid working. And what I mean by that is, what does it do to your people, including the security function? What needs to be delivered by your team? What can be get from out? What you can get from outside? So make sense of the new operating model, also functionally for your security organization. You don't need to do everything in-house. None of us have this right skill set to do everything by ourselves. So I think you need to come up with that operating model, and what does the new digital infrastructure mean to your team? The second one is, I think, on the value proposition of security. I think thinking a little bit outside the box here. So it's not just a policy or a compliance tick box. We all know that, but you need to also think about ways to get included in the table when your CIO is thinking about migrating to the cloud. It's actually not about sitting on the side and thinking, oh, it's all very risky, but thinking about, okay, well, if you want to do that, you'd rather do these things, and maybe you can get better return on investment because you're using more public cloud. So thinking a little bit more outside the box, like how can security help improving quality or reducing costs sometimes if done right. And the last point is, I think we made this point. Your regulation doesn't need to apply to you, but you can learn a lot from it. This operational resiliency, for example, is a good playbook. If you want to revise your business continuity plans, have a look at that. It doesn't apply to you today, but it's a good source of reference document, and it might apply to you in the future. So have a look at those reference documents.
Terrific, thanks, Serdar. Natalia, what's the key takeaways for today?
Consider the company approach that you're using at the moment. Are you focusing on the future trends that would affect your industry, or are you focusing on mitigating what's affecting you at this point? Obviously, there's no ideal formula here. You should focus on both more or less equally, because both of them are important. obviously it's hard to anticipate the future cyber threats that would have come, but at the same time, you can invest in training, as we discussed, and you can outsource security tools that are out there that would help you out as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Natalia. And Roche.
Great. So I would say there is a wealth of information out there that is free to access. The NCSC has Exercise in the Box. Global Cyber Alliance provides a lot of toolkits. Serdar made the point, look at the Operational Resilience Act. It's a really good starting point. In fact, do that, you'll be pretty resilient. There's other stuff, NIST, trustworthy email, CMMC, pick anything. And then I would say this, look, the insurance companies are tired of paying out on ransomware, right? So what they're doing is that they are trying to reduce their own risk. And they are now looking for a number of things. So, and some of this stuff is free. So, you know, strong passwords, get a universal password manager that is free to download, just make that a policy. So passwords, strong, 12 characters or more and you're home and away. Or, you know, there's any 3 words, passwords, multi-factor authentication, just do it. It's easy. It's pretty, I mean, it could be free or it's really cheap. Another thing, of course, is like, you know, DMARC, they're looking for that. If you then got a bit of money, you want to be looking at endpoint protection. But there's lots of stuff that you can do today to materially make a difference to your external cybersecurity posture. And you will be surprised at how, by shutting those digital doors, we're going to be able to cut an awful lot of the cybercrime out.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. And we had one we had a question in the chat about sources of advice for upskilling trustee boards for charities. And I would just, I'll just quickly answer that one, which is I would suggest going to the Charities Security Forum. And I put the link in the chat. And I've spoken to them in the past, and they're a good source to go to for that. So I'd say just to sort of sum up, we are at the end of our time. I think, you know, the message comes through really loud and clear. Get the basics right. Think about the cyber hygiene. Go to a trusted source like the NCSC to, you know, to get those basics, and then, you know, invest invest in the basics that are going to get your business right. And don't worry too much about all that talk about 0 days and you know, and other things. Get the basics right, and you'll be protected from the vast majority of those things. So terrific. Thank you very much, our 3 speakers. A whirlwind tour. You did direct and to the point and very succinct. Thank you, Natalia Cerga, Serdar Cabuk, and Rois Thuama. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.